this is really interesting. I've gotten a pile of books here, some selected by me, some selected by Nadine, which I think the latter excites me the most, because this is like somebody thinking that I'll like something, which is like when a good book gets given to you by a friend who thinks that you'll enjoy it. This one is Like a Woman, Essays, Readings, Poems by Quinn Latimer. Hotel for Robert Ashley. Hotel rooms had not lost their thrill for her. She opened her bags, pulled out her screens, a laptop, 2 phones. There was something in the air of her screens. Pink digital dust. There was something in the air here in the 1950s German hotel, with its gold railing and pre-war black and white photographs, and out there in this small city in Mitteldeutschland. There was something. It had an architecture, this feeling. She entered this feeling like a hotel. A woman at a desk handed her the key to this feeling. It was old and heavy. It was mineral. It was metal. No, it was flat and light like a credit card. She would lose it soon, this card, this key, this feeling. But she also knew that it would come back, the way that cards and feelings canceled now always do. Inside her room, she began thinking about the project. It was spectral, unwritten, unsequenced. The kind of rain, its fiction faced itself outside her walls. She saw her anxiety like a room down the hall, its door ajar, its shadow falling across the ugly mid-century carpet, finding its form. You must find your form, a translator tells a critic in some previous century. You must find your form, she whispers to herself, in the hotel of the present. Autumn begins to gather its children together outside. The children play on the trees like leaves. They begin to fall. Their mother moon calls them down. Children, so many leaves in the palette of the 1970s, orange, red, brown. They look up at her, pale mother, pale coin, pale moon from their place on the ground. They think about her mind. It excites them, it bores them. Their boredom pale and luminous and banal as what? As any leisure architecture. Inside, she was thinking about being a woman in a hotel room. It was a way to feel time, to hold it, to make of temporality a body, something mineral, that kind of specificity. The pleasure of criticality, of embodiment, etc. Anyway, she always had this feeling. She felt herself as in a genre. The genre of women in hotel rooms on business. The hotel in America has too many doors for us to count, write the philosophers. The soft work of some European landscape outside, the satisfaction of work, of literature in the interior, the labor of art, the art of labor. Now she was depressed. Not really. She entered this irony, this dialect of feeling like, what? Like a hotel. She sat on the small couch in her room and pulled off her boots. Archaeology sang a small song to itself in the suburbs outside the city. Inside the suburb of her feelings, she felt the kind of small, fleet, perfect satisfaction that offered itself like a stone, like a body, like a river, like the narrative that might hold them together. She thought of Virginia Woolf entering her river, variables in her pockets, of her uncle joking at the beach, checking her own pockets after a breakup. She felt the syntax of her feeling like water pulling her along. On both sides, shore, on both shores, hotels, which rose like pale beacons. In their shadow, the laborers who built them rested 5 to a bed. At the end of some empire, she had determined to be what? A kind of person. A body was part of this decision. Thin dresses of wind like children, slight panic of childhood, loose sleeves in the evening. Children like her crossed borders, filled boats and camps while she looked at women on the back of books. When the ocean was a hotel, she entered each weekend, checking into its blue and gray rooms out before evening. But now she was in a hotel room in Central Europe, her colleagues down the hall, on different floors in various bars or at the offices 10 minutes away. If you would just follow the tram lines, their silver streak, you would get there. She would get there. But for now she was alone. She sat on the bed, studied its contours and capital, which made her think about her love who was not in it. Not in this feeling. It was the feeling of work, a kind of purpose, the feeling of rooms to accommodate such labor, her ambition. The hotel of her ambition. Last night at the press conference in the auditorium of the Bauhaus Art School, she said something about a kind of radical realism. It was her only good line. She was talking about books or about artists or about her life in hotel rooms. She was talking about the writers she favored, whose work took the form of letters, of diaries, of novels, of scripts written in the margins of the quotidian. In her head she was tracing a kind of mother influence dialectically answered by the daughter who would receive it. So many artistic models, she thought from the stage. So many fathers, so many mothers. Henry James's Essential Loneliness, for example. Simon Weil's Decreation, etc. The audience asked a question about presence and absence. She answered that moving through an exhibition was always about this situation, the presence of the artwork, the absence of the artist and their process, except for performance, the live document, etc. Anyway, she said, as spectators, we understand absence instinctively. We feel it like a hotel around us, like an auditorium built by the Bauhaus on the edge of a park, all green and green swans, she said. She had a glass of grappa with the Greek curators at the hotel bar after. They spoke about gender, literature, and islands. They spoke about power as a way to add criticality to their gossip. The bartender was friendly in an ironic sort of way. She appreciated this. She appreciated the Greek curators with their dark, beautiful hair. She appreciated the delicacy of their arguments made decorous by their accents, which scripted the air like some cursive railing. She appreciated the grappa. It was all very Fassbinder. She was in Mitteldeutschland. Her hotel was called Days in Hessenland. There was a film crew shooting in the hotel, mostly in the ballroom. Their movie was set in the 1950s. It was all very mid-century, but now the time was 2 a.m., sometime in the 2000s, because it's always 2 a.m. in a hotel room. The full moon blaring, pale face, pale coin, pale, moon, through her window, pouring like light around her, a kind of milky water in which she lay suspended. She looks at the moon, at the church covered with scaffolding, below it a kind of veil. She looks at the sea-green patina of the copper cupola. She looks at the dark scaffolding of the sky, which reminds her of the strange scaffolding of her life, its hotel rooms, Bauhaus auditoriums, pre-war and post-war offices and apartments. She looks at her phone, which has made a small and now ceasing sound, a kind of purr. The text says that the dean has offered a modest fee. Has she booked the hotel in Geneva? She has. It is called the Adriatica. It is her favorite hotel in Switzerland. Surface makes of the days a form, but she can't touch it. The citizens make of her a tourist and so go back to the material. In her German hotel, she misses breakfast because she's listening to a track on YouTube. She thinks longingly about eggs and bacon, but then realizes she is not hungry. It is just the idea of a free breakfast. A free lunch, something to be had without work, labor, money, etc. Sometimes she thinks everything is about class, about entitlement, inheriting power, the liquid of privilege, or not. Then she thinks it's all about race, gender, and geography, then of history, then of... She wants to turn her mind, its hotel, off. She thinks of her mind as a hotel. She once wrote a poem in which her heart was a chalet. In the New York novel she is reading, reissued to great acclaim, the main character says her mind is a tenement. Someone must have once written that their mind is a closet, a bathroom, Genet maybe, or Artaud. Anyway, someone. On the train, here she looked out the window and saw a cross. Every time she lifted her head from her computer, from her writing, and took in the country, she saw a cross. Red roofs and green fields. Speed like a brush through it, a blur of color against metal, orange leaves, descriptive forests written with wind. Then cross, cross, cross. She thought of the Jews who once lived here, filling these towns, these forests. She replaced the crosses with stars, the churches with temples, the light-haired with the dark. She projected against the landscape all the Jews she could conjure, from New York, Los Angeles, Basel, and Vienna. Images poured through her train window, a kind of monitor. Images poured through her imagination, a kind of monitor also. Children called her from other centuries, but when she called back, she saw that they were leaves falling under some moon. It was always the same moon. It was always a different hotel. It was always a different train that brought her there. Hotel of labor, hotel of architecture, hotel of old Europe, and hotel of new elsewhere. Hotel of abjection, hotel of dispossession, hotel of anthropology structural, hotel of economy, hotel of the non-universal body, hotel of myth, hotel of whiteness, hotel of the refrain, hotel of the cult novel, hotel of human capital, hotel of the poet and of the poet's theater, hotel of the post-war filmmakers that fill her computer, hotel of the film set, hotel of the Semitic, hotel of the migrant, hotel of the free lunch, hotel of archaic violence, hotel of Western expansion, hotel of assimilation, hotel of the queer, hotel of austerity, hotel of the political imaginary, hotel of the sovereign and of its literature, hotel of loneliness, hotel of difference, hotel of the summit and of the symptomatic, hotel of sympathy, hotel of gossip, hotel of the hotel bar, hotel of the great exhibition, hotel of women, hotel of French Switzerland, hotel of racial capitalism, hotel of resistance, hotel of the call and of the response, hotel of shame, hotel of error, hotel of the litany, hotel of the spectacle, hotel of the female confessional, hotel of influence, hotel of the writer, hotel of realism, hotel of October, hotel of Robert Ashley. Wow. So this is, there's so many different aspects of this. Amazing to read it and then have to digest it in front of you. But it's, there's something about hotels, I think, that bind us because it's a weird comfort in not belonging that characterizes displacements by choice and then displacements that are not of our own making. And I have a friend who was a former student named Lama Takrori, who's from Ramallah, Palestine, and she did this very beautiful project while she was at Northwestern University in the MFA program, and she started to collect all of the different items that would be left for the guest in the hotel room. So the shampoo, the hand lotion, I guess sometimes the toothpaste, but all these things that you're invited to loot, she would collect. And that proximity to those objects, if I'm not mistaken, and if I'm allowed to project my own theory into her process, it's almost like having those objects around her and having those experiences of being in these liminal spaces where we're conjured by those objects. It's sitting with those objects for long enough allowed her to gain some distance from her own nonfiction of being in a liminal space, and obviously the kind of easy metaphor of all this is that Palestine is that liminal space, but the kind of care that's offered through these provisions that one finds in, say, a hotel in Chicago or in New York or anywhere else aren't necessarily the kinds of things that one finds when they're displaced by trauma or they're dispossessed under traumatic conditions. But all of her work focused on the hotel room. And I remember at the opening of the NFA exhibition at Northwestern, she Skyped into the opening from a hotel that was just down the road. And it was a beautiful architectural distance that was being described there. And I read this and I think about those distances, and I think about the situation I'm in now, staying in a hotel, and the way that those sites become sites of possibility, but they always seem to be about absence at the end. Traveling for me means being away from my wife and being away from my kids, and it's never the kind of thing that I would say that I look forward to. In fact, when I get into the taxi and I leave for a place, it's like a countdown clock begins of like when I'm allowed to come back home. And but I think about the romanticization of hotel rooms, and as somebody who's a big Leonard Cohen fan, this is something that's been historicized in his songs and also in his life. Not only with the song about the Chelsea Hotel, where he alludes to an affair with Janis Joplin, and more or less is successful in a very magical way of basically giving the listener the texture of this place that was inhabited by poets and by artists for decades. And then as somebody who travels from place to place in an itinerant way as a kind of refugee from his own depression. But I find myself reading these words and thinking about how far away I am from some of the romanticization of these spaces. I feel like I felt these at one time or another, but I am the person that's going to be late to breakfast because I'm watching a YouTube video or listening to a song on YouTube, that I'll find every reason to be delayed in my hotel room. But there are things that I love here. Archaeology sang a small song to itself in the suburbs outside the city. I mean, for selfish reasons, I love that. And then as she's talking about this hotel being in Hessenland, it makes me think about my experience staying in hotels in Germany. Not that the hotels really counted, but every time I was on a train in Germany, I felt that same thing where she's talking about the Jews that used to live there. And there's nothing that's more visceral in a very disturbing way than being a Jew in a European train station that was built before the 1930s. Because it just seems like that was maybe the last architectural environment that somebody may have been standing in before they were in the camps. And then to look at that landscape and think about the depopulation of those cities, it's something that you grow up without experiencing as somebody who's a post-Holocaust Jew, but as somebody who's being taught by Jews that remember the Holocaust, you definitely hear those stories. But I do appreciate the Lorca-esque quality of the poem. And I do like the litany of hotels at the end, of all these different spaces and non-spaces to be in.